Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm super excited today as I have a lovely guest on the show. Lee, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me today.
Now, I am excited to we're going to be talking about a few different sort of health and nutrition topics. But before we dive in, can you share with listeners a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so I'm Lee Holmes. I'm a clinical nutritionist. I'm also a yoga and meditation teacher and a whole food chef, and I've been doing it for about 12 years now. I run a website called superchargedfood.com, which is all like recipes and things like that, very anti-inflammatory, healthy recipes. And then I have another website called superchargeyourgut.com, which is centered around gut health, which is my passion.
Amazing. And we are having you on the show today because you have a new book that's just come out as well.
Yes, I do have a new book. It's just behind me there. I don't know if you can see it. It's up here. I can grab it if you like. But it's called Nature's Way to Healing, a long COVID guide. So it's all around long COVID and post-viral illness. I'm really excited that it's been released and it's out in the world.
Well, I wanted to have you on the show and chat about long COVID and your journey, and obviously about the book, because it's a topic we haven't covered. But I know even in practice, I've come across many clients that have been diagnosed with long COVID. And I
Yeah.
think at the start of COVID, there was a bit of, maybe misbelief about, this isn't a thing or is this a thing? So
Mm.
before we chat about that, can you share your experience?
Yeah, so I got COVID in April 2022 when I was in England. So I was over there working and I thought, oh, this is just going to last a week. I'll be fine. I'll get back on the plane and come home back to Sydney. And I was hospitalized. I had pericarditis. I was really chronically fatigued. It really hit me like a ton of bricks. And for me, it wasn't so much a respiratory problem. It was a lot of other different symptoms that were happening within my body. And since writing the book and interviewing a lot of experts from around the world, we now know that it isn't just a respiratory problem. It is very much to do with other areas of the body. It's multisystemic. It's your cardiovascular system. It's your gastrointestinal system. It causes neuroinflammation. There's so many areas, blood clotting. So it's much bigger than we originally thought it was. Anyway, so I was kind of stuck in England. Don't want to say stuck, but I was there for a number of months and I finally made it home. And I literally had to crawl up my stairs. I have like 46 steps because I live in an area that's quite hilly. And I was dragging my suitcase behind me, got home, got into bed, and literally I was just bedbound for a few months. It was awful. Yeah, it was really hard because I had had something like chronic fatigue in the past. It was very similar to chronic fatigue, but this was different because there were so many different symptoms, especially the cardiovascular ones. And so, yeah, I had to sort of learn about, as a clinical nutritionist, I started to sort of apply some of my knowledge and principles, but it was a different beast. It was completely different to what I envisaged it may have been.
Mm. And if someone's listening in and going, well, I had COVID and I haven't felt the same quite
Yeah,
since, how
yeah.
do they know if they have long COVID or maybe it's something else? Or, is there any sort of, clinical diagnosis and checks that they can go through to find out?
Yeah, there are different tests that you can do. I guess if you look at the pathophysiology of when you got sick and whether you had COVID recently, that's a really good, obviously, sign to know that you've had COVID recently and you're just not feeling better. You're still feeling tired. There's over 200 symptoms actually within long COVID. So a lot of the general ones are post-exertional malaise. So you may have been busy and active and going to the gym, but you're just so tired afterwards, after any form of exercise. You might be chronically fatigued. So if you're suffering from those kinds of things, if you can actually, without doing a lot of testing, if you want to just look at it by whereby I used to go for, when I couldn't even get out of bed, I'd go for a 5-minute walk and then come home and rest for the rest of the day. And resting is the thing that really helps. So if you are chronically fatigued and then you do rest and you feel better, it kind of would appear that you would have long COVID. And long COVID is where it feels like COVID, but it's prolonged. And sometimes it can last up to and more than 2 years. There's been tissue samples taken from people that still had the COVID virus within their body 2 years later. So yeah, it can last.
Well, I was going to say that was going to be my next question. How long does it last? But more than 2 years, geez, that is a
It
long
can.
time. Yeah, and affects your life. And are some people at higher risk of developing long COVID in comparison to other people as well?
Yes, there are. Research shows that women actually are, and anyone with autoimmune style issues. Also, something called mast cell activation syndrome, which is something I have, which is where you have a lot of dysregulation within your immune system. And mast cells, which emit histamine, cause irregularities within, like hives and things like that. So those kind of people with immune issues are more prone to having long COVID, but it can also really affect anyone, it's not discriminatory at all.
Mm. And you touched on histamine there. I know your book contains a lot of low histamine recipes, obviously, because of that fact. But
Yeah.
again, if someone's listening in going, well, I don't know if I have high histamine or low histamine, how can they get
Yeah.
that checked out?
Yeah, so in regards to histamine, it's a, I guess, a chemical compound that's emitted by the mast cells within the body, which is a type of immune cell. So, for example, you can test it really easily with a low histamine diet. And in the book, I've got all the recipes. But for example, if you're eating something that is high in histamine, or you're drinking alcohol, or you're having things that are fermented, they're really high in histamine. If you feel itchy afterwards, or you feel tired after eating, or you come out in rashes or have those kinds of symptoms happening, then you may have an issue with histamine.
Well, that's some good indications for people.
So
And
watery eyes, runny nose, like hay fever type symptoms too, headaches, sore throat, those kinds of things.
Mm. And when you were sort of going through your journey of long COVID,
Yeah.
what, you're probably thinking, where do I start? How do I get out of this? If there's somebody listening in that has long COVID, where should they start?
Well, the two things that are kind of through my research and speaking to professors and scientists and medical practitioners all over the world, what I have kind of come to realize, and also from having long COVID myself, there are two kind of parts to it. And one of them is inflammation in the body. And then the other one is the histamine issue and the mast cell dysregulation issue. So if you're looking at a way to sort of treat it in the very beginning and help it along the way, anything that's antihistamine will really help. So you can do that either with antihistamines, or you can do it more naturally with things like quercetin or low histamine type diet. And then with the inflammatory component to long COVID, you can look at an anti-inflammatory diet or anti-inflammatories or natural anti-inflammatories, things like curcumin, fish oil, those kinds of things that really help.
So let's dive into an anti-inflammatory diet. My listeners have probably heard about it before, but if they're sort of new and they're tuning in, they might be a bit confused of what that might entail.
Yeah, so anti-inflammatory it's kind of like if you know of a Mediterranean style diet, it's kind of like that. So it's your good fats that help to reduce inflammation. Flaxseed, avocado, salmon, wild fish, those kinds of things. And it's fiber-rich veggies, colorful, sort of natural foods, staying away from more processed foods because they can be quite inflammatory. Sugar can be quite inflammatory to the body as well. So sugar as well. So and sort of fatty fried foods and things like that. So it's more of sort of a rainbow whole foods diet with lots of fish and yeah, good fats.
Mm. All the things that we really should be eating, but a lot of the time don't
Yeah,
potentially
exactly. Yeah,
always do it.
exactly. I mean, that will help you anyway within general health, I think. It's going to help your gut, your energy levels, your metabolism, those kinds of things. So I think in general that, but it's particularly for long COVID, a low histamine style diet really, really does help because it helps with that immune system mast cell dysregulation that happens where your whole immune system and your mast cells are just going crazy and you're getting all these tiredness after eating, you're getting hives, you're getting brain fog and all of that. And it really helps to settle that reaction down that happens when you have long COVID.
Mhm. And when it comes to some of the other sort of anti-inflammatory practices that may help, often exercise can be anti-inflammatory depending on what you're doing. But if you're
Yeah.
exercising too hard, it can actually, cause too much stress. So did
Mm.
exercise play a part, or was it just really energy-wise, it was just too much?
In the beginning, I didn't really exercise much, but what I was doing was pacing. So I taught myself to really listen to my body. And I could do a little bit, go for a walk, and every day that walk got longer, which was really good. And then I started gentle, like yin yoga and gentle yoga practices. I still haven't gone back to full on gym, but I'm older too. Like I'm turning 57 on Friday. So I think a lot of those really high cortisol type exercises aren't that good for me personally as you get older. So I do prefer more swimming and more gentle. I do a bit of kayaking and things like that. So I'm back to doing all of that, which is great. But exercise, yes, it can be, if you're over exercising, it can be quite hard on the body, and especially with fatigue and recovery times as well as you get older. You're
Mm.
young, so.
Don't say that. But I do love that you pointed out you need to listen to your body. So I think so
Yeah.
many people now kind of ignore those signs. And, then there's the other flip side of it. They go, well, I haven't been well for a while. I shouldn't exercise because that is going to be a bit taxing in energy. So I think it's trying to find that balance for you
Yeah.
as an individual too.
It's absolutely is. So it's like when you break your foot or something like that and you're healing it, but part of you has to sort of work it in order for you not to lose movement or whatever in your foot. Not movement, but you know what I'm saying. You have to sort of work that muscle to make it stronger in order for it to heal. So yeah, there is a fine balance. And it is trial and error, and it is really about tuning in and working with your own sort of internal knowledge, because I feel like as a clinical nutritionist we can give advice and work with clients, but really I feel like they are empowered to really tune into their own bodies as well, and we are sort of guiding them, but only you really know how you feel.
Exactly. And I think sometimes it gets very hard when you're maybe a type A personality or you've got a very busy life. You just keep going from one thing to the next and you never kind of stop and maybe sort of just take a few moments to tune in and see how you're feeling until you get really sick. And then it's
Yeah.
almost a bit too late.
That's exactly right. And also a big part of long COVID and any illness really, I think, is the nervous system dysregulation that happens. And especially during long COVID for people who are suffering with it, it can be really mentally destabilizing, because if you can't get out of bed, you start to become more insular. You don't really want to sort of reach out to people. You're not really going out. So there's a real mental health component to it too. So doing things that regulate your nervous system, breathing, yoga, gentle things that make you happy and make you feel better is a really, really big part of healing as well, especially in any condition, I think.
Mm. And we haven't touched on stress yet, but,
Yeah.
being anti-inflammatory and wanting to include, lots of those practices, I'm assuming that stress can be part of the cause or a contributor to prolonging COVID as well.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely stress, and also stress with your gut as well. So if you're stressing, it can really strip the body of your good bacteria and upset that balance in your gut microbiome, which obviously the gut is central to health and so many other conditions. And obviously not good for the nervous system either. And then you're sort of eating and then you're not digesting it properly. So it can cause issues across the body.
Mm. And I know we were sort of saying before that we want to lower histamine, and some of those foods that are high in histamine are fermented foods, which are
Yes.
usually very good for
Yeah.
the gut. So somebody may be going, well, I'm trying to heal my gut and I'm supposed to eat fermented foods, but then I'm not supposed to eat them. If they
Mm.
can't eat fermented foods, what other types of foods should they be focusing on to really help their gut health?
Help the gut. So things like fiber. Fiber is obviously really, really good for the gut. So fruit and veggies are really good. Multicolored sort of diet is really good. Probiotic rich foods are really good too. But so if you think of not the fermented style of foods, but maybe a little bit of yogurt and things like that, they're quite good for the gut too. And then you want to have antioxidants. So you want to have really brightly colored foods if you can, low histamine style ones as well. So there's lots of low histamine style foods that you can eat that are bright and colorful, capsicum, things like that, carrots, those kinds of things that are good.
And, if we're sort of thinking that, as you said before, there's like chronic fatigue, which can be very
Mm.
similar in that, or sometimes you do, this season seems to be quite bad with different flus and stuff around. And even a few of
Yeah.
my clients have been complaining that it's taken them a really long time to get over. Can we apply a lot of what you can do for long COVID to other recovering from other illnesses as well?
Yeah, 100%, especially post-viral recovery. So this book is not only for long COVID, it's for chronic fatigue, post-viral recovery. The other thing that I didn't mention about long COVID actually, or COVID-19, what happens is when it gets into the body through the spike protein gets into the body, it can reactivate old viruses as well that have been laying dormant within the body. So you could then get COVID and then go, oh, why am I getting like shingles from because I used to have chickenpox, or why is this virus, chronic fatigue, flaring up again? So yes, this program or this book and protocol really helps with any post-viral
Mm.
problems because it really does, at the root of it, it is the inflammation and the mast cell stuff. So just really calming those down and then eating sort of whole foods if you can, less processed foods, that's going to help you recover. And rest is number one, rest and pacing.
And we focus a lot on recovering from, long
Mm.
COVID and respiratory illnesses. But if we are trying to stop us from even getting them in the first place and potentially boosting our immunity, are
Mm.
there any other things that you like to focus on that can help with that too?
Yeah, I think obviously the hygiene practices of you sort of not picking up viruses and trying to sort of not go in crowded places with people sneezing or, all over you and that kind of stuff, those kinds of things. But we also have to live as well. So and many people have had COVID now, so they have their own natural immunity, which is really good. But yeah, it is building up your gut health and your immune system so that when you do, or if you do get sick, then you're able to go over it quickly. So obviously the things of diet, lifestyle, low stress, looking after yourself, and sleep is really important. Hydration is really important. So I think it's all the things we apply, to general health that are going to really help. And just having routines of, if you go off a little bit and just pulling yourself back and just trying to eat something fresh and healthy, and not beating yourself up about it. There's a mental component to it being sick as well, I think.
Mm. And when it comes to supplements, are there any that you kind of recommend to people that may be great to take during this sort of cold and flu seasons that tend to happen?
Yeah, so I have a symbiotic, the Love Your Gut symbiotic, which is part of what I do. I do 20 different supplements on superchargeyourgut.com. So that one's really good. The symbiotic is a probiotic, a prebiotic, a digestive enzyme, and a dietary fiber. So really good for the gut and helps the gut immune system. So helps you when you're getting things. I also recommend for vitamin C, and just a really colorful, as I mentioned before, antioxidant rich sort of diet for that's really good for cold and flus as well. What else can I recommend? Yeah, that's kind of the main ones, I suppose. Curcumin's really good if you have inflammatory sort of issues. So that's turmeric or curcumin. I recommend that for inflammation, which is at the root of a few sort of conditions.
And if people are like, well, I know a few clients have tried to take curcumin, but it's been a bit too much for their
Yeah,
digestion.
yeah,
That hasn't worked. Can people eat fresh? Does that affect, because it's obviously at a lower
yeah.
dose than, say, the supplement form?
Yeah, they can. They can definitely put it into curries, put it into, I make the like a really nice turmeric latte sort of drink as well. So that's really good. Yes, you can definitely put it into porridge, you can stir it into things, and it is going to have those benefits.
Mm. And when it comes to, say, some of the other herbs that may be beneficial, and it's kind of the last thing you may top a salad with, but what most people don't tend to add in. Are there any specific herbs that you like to cook with, or that are in the book that can help as well?
Yeah, it's a lot of the Indian style ones. Like you mentioned, curcumin is really good. What else is there? Cumin's really, really good. It's very good for settling down the system. Cinnamon's actually really good. It's a blood sugar stabilizer, so I recommend that as well. In terms of another supplement, sorry, we were on to the last question, but quercetin is a really good anti sort of, it's a mast cell sort of stabilizer. So a lot of people with long COVID taking quercetin. So that's a good one as well. Yeah, just topping, just natural coriander's really good. If you've kind of, had a virus or a flu or something like that, it's a good heavy metal sort of chelator, so that's kind of good for the body. Fresh herbs, if you're growing your own sort of herbs and things like that, they're always really good. Basil's really nice as well. I love rocket. That's my favorite thing because it's very antihistamine. So I put rocket in my smoothies. Tastes really good, actually. You would think it would taste a bit peppery, but it doesn't. Taste really good. So they're the kind of herbs that I would generally use, just more sort of from the garden kind of
Yeah.
thing.
I love
Yeah.
rocket too. I put it on
Yeah.
everything.
Do you? Do you? I
Yeah.
love it. I love it. It's really good. Do
Yeah.
you cook with it, or what do you do
Ye-
with it?
I
Yeah.
usually use it in salads and things a lot, or
Yeah.
like if we, I'll do like a homemade pizza and top it with rocket,
Yeah. Me too.
or I'll do like smashed avocado on toast and I'll top it with anything that I can kind
Nice.
of put it on. I'll tend to put it on.
I made
Um,
I made a pizza the other day. It's actually on my Instagram, Lee Supercharged. And I made the base with what was it? Zucchini and cottage cheese. No
mm,
flour or anything in the base. It's really
yeah.
interesting. And an egg. So you whip it all up and you make it. And then I topped it with rocket and capsicum. It was really yummy.
Yeah, I've often done a cauliflower, like the cauliflower
Yeah.
rice. You can make that into a base too. So there are
Yeah.
definitely lots of options out there for people if you're gluten free or trying to just boost the amount of veg you want to, have or even improve your gut health as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
Now, can you share a little bit of your sort of daily routine and some of the habits that you have to really look after your health?
Yeah, sure. So one of my non-negotiables is Vedic meditation. So when I wake up, I meditate for 23 minutes. So 20 minutes of meditation where I have a mantra and I'm just, repeating the mantra. And then I do 1 minute of what I call percolation, where I just sit and let everything just kind of percolate. And then I do 2 minutes of manifestation. So I'm just thinking about positive things. It was really funny. Can I tell you about what I did the other day? So I have a cat and I was manifesting that I would have a lap cat. And my cat is 6.5 years old and has never once sat on my lap, like never. She's a complete narcissist. I love her, but she's really funny. Like when she's hungry, she'll sit on the remote control. She'll just do capoeira off the walls. She's really naughty. She's really naughty. Anyway, in the morning, I was manifesting a lap cat. I was like, I really want a lap cat. And that night she came and sat on my lap for 2 hours. I couldn't believe it.
Wow. It's funny you say that about your cat because a few clients have told me similar stories about their cats.
Really? What is it
Yes.
about cats at the moment?
I don't know. They've got their own personalities, that's for sure.
They sure do. They're so funny. She cracks me. I've got a dog as well. They get on pretty well, so it's nice.
And then once you've done your
Oh
meditation in
yeah.
the morning, do
Sorry. So
you,
I'll do the
yep.
meditation and then I will come downstairs and then I will make some kind of tea, something like that. Maybe a chai because I love chai. And then I'll try and do some exercise in the morning, but it's like a gentle walk. So I'll go for a walk and then I'll come back and then I'll get into my work day. And then I'll stop for lunch. And I always try and make something like with lots of colors and healthy salad and things like that for lunch. And then I go back to work. And then in the early afternoon, I do try and do either some kind of meditation or a walk or some other kind of exercise. I live across the road from the beach, so I'll try and walk down to the beach with my dog or do something like that. And then I always try and finish work around 6 o'clock because I used to just be such an A-type personality and I was just working all the time 24/7. And I realized it just was not good for me. So yeah, and since having long COVID as well, I really try and put in boundaries around work now.
And I think that's a good tip for everybody, especially if you've gotten, either really run down from an illness or you're feeling a
Mm.
bit burnt out, that, having those boundaries around work and even having some
Yeah,
time for yourself can make a big difference.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I agree. And in terms of healthy things, I sometimes like in summer, I'll make a healthy smoothie and I'll put the rocket in and carrot and some fruits and veggies and my gut powders and yeah, really try and do something like that. I have a sort of I go more low histamine and anti-inflammatory together. So, but I try and have a diverse diet as well, because I think it's important not to cut whole food groups out. So I kind of just try and eat a bit of everything, but always try and manage to have some color on my plate.
Mm. Well, I think even just hearing about the histamines today, that might be something new for
Mm,
listeners. You know, they've probably heard of anti-inflammatory before, but they probably haven't heard about the effects of histamines. So
yeah.
when it comes to picking food that are low histamines, we talked about the
Mhm.
high fermented foods, but
Yeah.
when it comes to things like dairy and meat and those whole foods, are there
Mm.
certain ones we should be opting for and avoiding the others?
Yeah, so anything sort of fresh is really good. So if you looking at things like canned tuna, because the tuna is being canned, it can build up histamines. So they're really high in histamines. But if you're going for fresh fish, like cooking fish, it's better. And meat's the same. So aged meat's high in histamine, non-aged meat's not high in histamine. And you can't really go wrong if you're doing your sort of fruits and veggies. I'm trying to think of some low histamine fruits are things like blueberries are really good. I think apples are really good. So yeah, more of the low histamine ones, and trying to avoid anything aged, anything, even leftovers, if you're leaving them for a couple of days, they build up histamines as well. Also, staying away from vinegars, anchovies, they are really quite high in histamines, and some alcohol as well.
Mm. I think alcohol will be the one that people won't want to
Yeah,
stay away from, but it definitely is
yeah.
good.
Yeah.
And what's your take on coffee?
Coffee, since having COVID and long COVID, I haven't been able to drink coffee, which is really unfortunate because I really like it. But I think like one or two coffees a day is fine. The only thing with having more than that, it can really sort of dysregulate your cortisol levels and adrenals. So you can get sort of really, it's quite taxing on the adrenals. Depending on the coffee that you take, some of it has quite a lot of chemicals in it. So I think just having one or two a day is okay, but anything more than that, you may be sort of more relying on it. I don't know.
Mm.
What do you think about it?
I think it's individual to the person. So
Yeah.
depending on how it affects you and again how much stress you've already got happening, if
Mm,
you've got some issues going on with hormones, or maybe you can't sort of lose weight and your gut's not so happy, then I usually get clients to sort of cut back on the coffee for a period of time. But then
yeah.
if they are having coffee, I always say get the best coffee that's possible, chemical free,
Yeah.
organic, mold free, because mold is another
Yeah.
thing that can be present in coffee too. So it's one of those caveat things, add it in if you can tolerate it really well, 1 to 2 a day max. Otherwise, if you can for a period of time, sometimes it's good to have a break.
Mm,
I have a friend who is, she loves her coffee, like loves it, but limits it to just one a day. But she finds even that one a day, if she doesn't have that one, she gets headaches. So, she then she wants to have a break, but
mm,
it's a
mm,
withdrawal period of sort of 3 to 5 days where she feels
mm.
terrible. And then she'll do that and go for a period of time without having a coffee, and then has
Yeah.
one again and gets back on the bandwagon. So I think it
Yeah.
really can affect you in different ways. That's obviously a
Yeah.
more extreme way.
Yeah.
But I myself don't drink coffee. So,
I
I'm
don't
not.
either. I miss it a little bit. I drink dandelion tea and I drink chai. I love chai.
Yeah,
Think Indian, maybe. I love chai. It feels good.
yeah, I'm more of a green tea and peppermint tea person, so more of the herbals. And I haven't
No.
really had much chai, but I probably should give it more of a go.
Yeah, it's yummy.
Now, before we wrap up, is there anything that we haven't covered that you'd like to share with our listeners?
Um, I'm thinking about COVID and long COVID. I guess for some people, a lot of doctors are only just learning more about long COVID, and they don't know a whole lot about what's happening with it now. So that some people of my clients have come to me and said they've been medically gaslit a lot because and how could the doctors know? It's such a new thing, and we're still learning and still research being developed, but um it is about just finding the right sort of medical professionals, maybe integrative doctors, if you're not getting much luck with your GP. And yeah, just don't, if you feel gaslit, don't take it, don't think it's you. Don't you know what I mean by that?
Yeah.
Because there's
And
a lot of misinformation out there also about COVID, and it's a very inflammatory topic. So if you are feeling bad, don't get gaslit into thinking you're making it up, because these things are really real and people are suffering with them. So yeah, I'd like to say
yeah, I definitely agree. And, there's, as you said, it's really trying to find somebody that's going to listen to your
that.
concerns and help you in the best way that you can. But that was one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the podcast because, compared to a lot of, other illnesses that are out there, this is quite new. And there
Yeah.
has been a lot of conjecture about whether or not, it is a real thing. And we
Mm.
now know, we've got the scientific research to back it up. So
Yeah.
if there's help for people out there, I think sometimes it's just finding that help.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, I always like to ask my guests that if there's one piece of advice that you could give that our listeners, after listening to this podcast, could go out and instigate straight away, what would it be?
Oh, yeah, I think just knowing that the inner knowledge and knowing that you have the power, you are the steward of your own health and wellness, and you have the power to make your own decisions. And yeah, you intrinsically know what's really going on in your body, and listen to it and tune in and take time to, yeah, reflect and love it. And yeah, that's what I would say.
I think that's great advice. I think we can all take a little bit more time just to tune in. And as you said, earlier in the podcast, it doesn't take a lot of time. It's just a minute, in the morning, just to, sort of sit in your body and
Yeah,
just
yeah,
feel what's happening.
yeah.
Now, where can listeners reach out and connect with you?
So I'm on Instagram and Facebook at Lee Supercharged, and also superchargeyourgut.com or superchargedfood.com.
Amazing. And is your book available on the website or where do they head for
Yeah,
that?
it's on the website. It's called Nature's Way to Healing, a long COVID guide. It's also on Amazon. It's on superchargeyourgut.com, and it's in bookstores as well.
Awesome. Well, we'll link all that up in the show notes too. So listeners can head on to the show notes to find all those links. But thank you so much for coming on the podcast today, Lee. It's been such a pleasure to have you on.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed talking to you. Thanks for having me.